Okay, here we go. A lot to talk about with the 49ers, who, yes, they have freed up $17.8 million in salary cap space today with Eric Armstead coming off the books. But it is now time to discuss 49ers mandatory veteran minicamp. And we're going to discuss all of the above. Hell, maybe we'll even go through the entire 49ers roster again. Sometimes I kid, sometimes I don't. I went through all 90 players the other day, but I didn't give enough time to the defensive line. So perhaps we'll talk some D line today. The main question, though, on everybody's mind is, will Brandon Aiyuk and Christian McCaffrey show up? Tuesday and Wednesday is when practice is being held this week, 10:40 a.m. in Santa Clara. We will then have media availability following those sessions. Kyle Shanahan is going to speak on Tuesday. Nick Sorensen, 49ers defensive coordinator, is going to speak on Wednesday. Then, and select players each time too. Then, after it is all said and done, the 49ers will break for the summer, and we won't reconvene with them until sometime in the July 20s. The firm date of training camp, at least the beginning of it, has not been set yet. I can tell you, looking at the calendar here, that July 22nd is a Monday, and training camp should start at some point that week. In the past, it started on the Wednesday of that week, with the Tuesday being the introductory press conference. So if it follows the same pattern, then on July 23rd, which is a Tuesday, we'll talk to Kyle Shanahan and select players. Maybe Brock Purdy will be part of that group. And then on the 24th, the 49ers will take the field for the first time. Now, you could fast forward to August 10th. That's going to be preseason game number 1 for the 49ers. That's going to be in Nashville. So I'm going to fly to Nashville this week. I'm going to spend some time there. And then I'm going to fly back to the Bay Area for training camp. Then I'll fly back to Nashville a couple weeks after that. Margot's happy about that. August 10th against the Titans. The Saints, they're now, since the Rams, they're now hosting their training camp, I think, at Loyola Marymount. They're going to be in Los Angeles County proper. They used to hold their training camp at UC Irvine. So the UC Irvine facilities freed up for the New Orleans Saints to get the hell out of the bayou during August and July for training camp. And the Saints are going to be holding their training camp at UC Irvine. So after the 49ers get back from Tennessee and that week 1 game against the Titans, they're going to fly down to Orange County, and they're going to hold 2 joint practices with the Saints at the Saints training camp in Irvine. Then both teams are going to fly up from there to the Bay Area to play a preseason week 2 game on Sunday, August 18th at Levi's Stadium. Following that, the 49ers will have a Friday night game, August 23rd at Las Vegas. That will be week 3 of the preseason against the Raiders. So it's the Titans at home against the Saints, but joint practice is in Southern California, and then a game on the road again with the Raiders in Las Vegas on the 23rd before the traditional Labor Day weekend break, and then week 1, 49ers hosting the Jets Monday Night Football after the rest of the league debuts the new kickoff rule that weekend. That's going to be on September 9th for the 49ers. So the question is, where in that window, at what point in that window will Brandon Aiyuk finally agree to his new deal with the 49ers? Will it be before that window? Will it be during that window? I mean, we've had all sorts of examples with 49ers A-listers in the past, right? We had Fred Warner in 2021 sign a little bit before the start of training camp, so that would have been in mid to late July. We had George Kittle. Now, remember that everything was different in 2020. Training camp, the start of it got pushed back to early August, and George Kittle signed right before the start of camp. So that would have been late July, early August. I forgot the exact date, but it was in time to begin training camp. It wasn't until 2022 where a player signed a little too late to be there at the start of camp. That was Deebo Samuel in 2022. He wasn't at the first couple days of training camp. He finally did sign in late July, and I think he missed the first non-padded cluster of 3 practices, but he was back in action for when the pads did come on at 49ers training camp after signing his contract. So this is obviously not trending in the right direction for the 49ers, right? Because you got players signing later and later every single season up until 2023. That was the Nick Bosa season. And I mean, he missed all of training camp, all of preseason. Labor Day weekend, nothing happened. And finally, Nick Bosa signed the week of the 49ers season opener against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I still remember being in Pittsburgh. This was after Bosa had finally signed, but I took the flight to Pittsburgh, and I am sitting there at this beautiful spot overlooking the whole city. I took the incline, that little funicular that they have, right? The cable car that takes you up the hill. And I found this place. I'm having a great dinner with my laptop, typing up the Nick Bosa contract analysis from Pittsburgh the night before the 49ers took on the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that was fun. That was a good week one trip. But Nick Bosa nowadays, he says, well, I wish I wouldn't have had to go from signing a contract straight to walkthrough for the 49ers Steelers game. And he says that it negatively impacted his play for the first few weeks of last season. But I'm sure he doesn't regret the type of money that he was able to sign for. $34 million per year, and there was, what was it, like $110 million guaranteed. It was the biggest amount of fully guaranteed money that we had ever seen for a non-quarterback. And it was also the highest APY that we had ever seen for a non-quarterback. I don't think that Brandon Aiyuk has the type of leverage that Nick Bosa does, just because Bosa is Bosa, one of the very, very best players in all football, arguably the best defensive player in the game. Brandon Aiyuk is really good at the receiver position, but he doesn't have that kind of stature at the receiver position. Plus, the 49ers just drafted Ricky Pearsall. They have Deebo Samuel on the team. They've got George Kittle catching passes. Christian McCaffrey, yes, we're talking about him in this show as well. He's also on the team. So Brandon Aiyuk can make the 49ers a little bit uncomfortable. He obviously doesn't want to expose his body to any injuries until they get this contract done. But I don't think that the chances of this turning into a Nick Bosa situation where it lasts until September are not very big. This is probably more along the Deebo Samuel contract signing timeline. And that pivots to the natural next question of this week. It's been voluntary up until now. It's mandatory this week with those two practices that I talked about on Tuesday and Wednesday at 10:40 a.m. Players are subject to fines if they don't show up. So with OTAs being voluntary, we've gotten used to guys like Trent Williams not being there. But Trent Williams, I think in all certainty, is going to be there this week, so he doesn't face those fines. And then the question is, well, will Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Aiyuk be there this week? It hadn't been confirmed to be a contract issue with Christian McCaffrey. In fact, the only report that's come out about that has suggested that it's not a contract issue. But Christian, I think, is a candidate for a pay raise. He's a candidate for at least some guarantees being added into his deal. He's got 2 years left at about $24 million total, so $12 million per year. But there are no guarantees in that, and one could argue that he's the 49ers' best player. So maybe that's something that does come to Christian McCaffrey over the course of this offseason. Brandon Aiyuk is definitely in a contract situation right now. We've known that for quite some time. We know that he's under contract for the $14.1 million. We know that the 49ers exert a certain amount of leverage here that is significant because of the fact that they can make him play on this fifth-year option, or else he doesn't get paid at all. And they can also put a couple franchise tags on Brandon Aiyuk in the seasons following this 2024 one. So that puts a limit to what Brandon Aiyuk might get. It's not the open market. They are paying him before he's set to hit the open market, but Brandon Aiyuk does want some more financial security than just the fifth-year option salary of $14.1 million this year. He would like to cash out a little bit sooner, just like so many other NFL players like to cash out a little bit sooner, even if they're about to play on that fifth-year option. So Aiyuk is going to have to concede a little bit. The 49ers are going to have to concede a little bit to get this done. The 49ers might be happy not conceding at all if Brandon Ayuk's demands remain too high, and they'll say, hey, just play on this fifth-year option. It's all still on the table, obviously, but they've been working toward getting a deal done for months. now at this point. And I think that real deadline pressure is typically what causes one or both sides to move to a spot in the middle that is amenable for both sides to then agree to sign a deal. And there is currently no true deadline pressure in this situation until it's not going to come until that time in later July when training camp is upon us. Now, for Bosa, they needed the deadline pressure of a game, an actual missed game checks last year to move the needle. Training camp wouldn't do it. The first preseason game wouldn't do it. The second, third preseason game wouldn't do it. It was week 1 against the Steelers, that really hard deadline when true money was going to start to be lost. That was going to be the big inflection point for Nick Bosa, and he signed before then. I wonder if for Brandon Aiyuk, will the deadline of training camp be enough for him to, and his side and the 49ers side, to reach agreement, or is it going to be a little bit later? I know what the 49ers would prefer, and that is for this to not last that long. The 49ers would definitely prefer for Aiyuk to be in training camp and for all of this to be in the rearview mirror, so they don't have any lingering after effects like the Deebo Samuel situation and like the Nick Bosa situation into the regular season. But this week, since fines are a thing, I do expect to see Trent Williams there. I do expect to see Brandon Aiyuk there. I do expect to see Christian McCaffrey there. I don't expect those guys to be participating in 11-on-11 drills. I think that'd be borderline dangerous for the 49ers to take guys who haven't been activated in team settings and thrust them into 11-on-11 work. I also think that Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Aiyuk would even say, no, we're here so we don't get fined, pulling their best Marshawn Lynch impersonations. But no, we don't want to be in these 11-on-11 activities just tossed in there cold turkey. But we probably will see those guys at the facility. If we don't, well, we'll talk about it when if and when that does happen on Tuesday and on Wednesday. In related news, the 49ers did free up that $17.8 million of salary cap space. I did go around San Francisco with the video that I made about that. So I need a drink of water. Why don't I just let the past version of myself give you guys this news?
Afternoon city tour today, starting in Noe Valley on a significant day for the 49ers. It's June 2nd, which means they've officially freed up the $17.8 million in salary cap space that originally was assigned to Arik Armstead's salary. Remember that they designated Armstead for a post-June 1st release, so June 2nd means that money actually now frees up. With Armstead, the post-June 1st release is a mechanism to split the dead cap hit when you release a player between this season and next season's books, so obviously they'll still be dealing with dead money from Arik Armstead, but the salary, which the 49ers were never going to pay this year, it still had to be on their books until June 2nd. So the 49ers now have about $25 million in 2024 salary cap space, but here's the key point that people are missing, and these are the people that are saying, oh, the 49ers are going to turn around and sign somebody or make some kind of huge financial splash with this new move. There's actually no move that the 49ers can afford today that they couldn't afford yesterday on June 1st before this money freed up. I'll talk about some potential free agent signings in a second, because I think the safety position is one that the 49ers have been interested in. But the bottom line is that there's no big ticket potential signing out there that the 49ers can suddenly afford with this new money. In fact, you have to look at salary cap space as a big picture thing. Unused space carries over from season to season. And I've talked so much about the future expenditures that the 49ers will have. Brandon Aiyuk's new contract, when that comes. Brock Purdy's potential new deal next year. The 49ers have to be thinking about this $25 million as something they can carry over into the future, at least most of it, so they can handle all of those bills that are soon to come due. Now, that doesn't discount some additional spending on free agents this offseason. And we do know that the 49ers, at least at one point this offseason, were interested in adding a veteran safety into the mix. Remember that they hosted Rayshawn Jenkins on a visit, then Seattle gave him a 2-year deal worth up to $12 million. And Rayshawn Jenkins at his press conference said that the 49ers actually offered him the same money, but he preferred the state of Washington's tax situation. The 49ers also hosted Julian Blackmon on a visit before he re-signed with the Colts. So the evidence is there that the 49ers, at least at one point this offseason, wanted to sign a veteran safety. I mean, John Lynch at the owners' meetings mentioned that they'd still been in touch with Deshaun Gibson Sr., who's been with the team over the past 2 seasons. So the safety market has moved slowly. Somebody like Justin Simmons, a star, is still available. Somebody like Jamal Adams, formerly a star, is also still available. And it's fair to wonder if the 49ers will be interested in adding another piece as the season comes closer. Now, it's worth saying that their interest in Rayshon Jenkins and their interest in Julian Blackmon, that came before they drafted Malik Mustafa, who's a good safety in his own right. And it also came earlier in the offseason, before they knew as much about Talanoa Hufanga's recovery. Obviously, Hufanga has been coming along from his ACL tear. We've seen him over on the side field during OTA. So maybe now they're more confident in Talanoa Hufanga actually coming back in time from that ACL tear. Maybe now that they have some intel on Malik Mustafa from practice, the 49ers don't feel that they need to add a veteran safety, but the option is still there if they do indeed want it. Now, you're probably wondering about the mural right behind me, Candlestick Park. Well, this is Roxy Food Center. I took the J Church Muni line out to Balboa Park, authentic San Francisco neighborhood. And if you're ever thinking about mixing pastrami and tri-tip, this is the place to do it. Yelp actually made a top 100 list of the best places to eat in the U.S. a few years ago, and Roxy Food Center here in Balboa Park was on it. I made it back to the inner city, Dolores Park, San Francisco, back on the J train. What a Sunday it is. Right past San Francisco's Liberty Bell, which, of course, unlike Philadelphia's, is not cracked, and further into the Mission. So let's talk a little bit more about the 49ers salary cap situation. It is impossible to properly analyze the 49ers financial strategy without taking the NFL's growing revenues into account, because the more money the NFL makes, the higher the salary cap goes. And the 49ers have surfed the wave of an increasing salary cap for several seasons now. But this past season's addition to the salary cap was the biggest that we had ever seen. You can thank Taylor Swift for that. You can thank the NFL's new streaming deals for that. But the bottom line is the 49ers have a lot of A-list players. They're paying them big money, and they're very interested in continuing to add to that core of A-list players moving forward. With that being the case, they're relying on the salary cap continuing to increase. Every single indication, from the ones that I already talked about with the Taylor Swift effect to the fact that the NFL is expanding into international markets with a lot of these games, every single indication suggests that the 49ers will indeed continue to benefit from a rising salary cap. That puts them into good position to pay Brock Purdy, to pay Brandon Aiyuk, to make it sustainable. But they're still going to need money from the now to carry over into the future to be able to afford everything in this, because with all the restructures that the 49ers have done, and that effectively just moves cap payments into the future, they're set to face some significant dead money bills in the coming years. For example, Jawan Jennings, 3 years from now, he's going to cost $8 million, which is over twice as high as any cap hit that he's going to cost while he's actually under contract and playing for the 49ers. So there's going to be, I would say, over $30 million in various dead money costs, and that money will probably grow. That total will probably grow. That's going to hit the cap in future years. So the fact that you have $25 million open right now means you can cover almost all of that, the vast majority of that at the very least, if you let it carry over into future years. 49ers, and nobody's quite sure how much space the 49ers will need to operate 2, 3, 4 years from now, because nobody's exactly sure how big the salary cap will be. It's tied to revenues on an annual basis. But so far, the 49ers have been playing an educated game of guess and check. They've sustainably surfed the wave. They're not like the Saints, who have had to cut players and who have, I don't think, managed the cap nearly as well as them. And the 49ers have to continue doing that even as the expenditures get more and more extreme moving forward. That's where San Francisco is right now with the salary cap. It is at a fascinating spot.
Fascinating spot indeed. And as you can tell, June, in fact, is the windiest month of the year in San Francisco. I had to strain a little bit to make that video for you guys. I had to find spots where it wasn't quite as windy. It still was giving us a little bit of trouble. That being said, I'll take the wind over the June gloom. Down in LA, San Diego, I've seen videos, pictures from today. Some people down there just they're not seeing the sun. It's overcast. So nice and sunny in San Francisco. Might even have to fly the drone a little bit this week, get some good shots of the city. But down in Southern California, I don't think it is. However, it is windy, and that just makes this time of the year a little difficult to do our walking coverage in. But we did do a city tour. I mean, why sit in front of a screen and in front of a wall for all the videos? You got to mix it up, and we're in one of the most beautiful spots in the world, and really good food too. Roxy Food Center was legit today. In case you missed it, that's tri-tip and pastrami. They call it the Joker on the same sandwich, and I love Roxy Food Center. It's down over there by Balboa Park. As I said, authentic San Francisco neighborhood. BART was shut down today. They're doing some track maintenance, so you couldn't take BART to Balboa Park. But I just took the J train, went up from down from Noe Valley, San Jose Avenue. You get off there and get the sandwich, check out the Candlestick mural, get back on the train, head back up to Dolores Park. Kind of stayed on the southern side of the city today because you guys know I'm very often I'm over by the water, by North Beach. I'm swimming a lot. I needed a couple days off from that. Was at the Italian Club on Friday. So in San Francisco now on that southern side of the city, checking it out today, even though it was windy, probably less windy on this side of the city than it was over there. Anyway, one of the things I talked about was, are the 49ers still interested in adding a free agent safety? This is the list of safeties who are still available, along with their teams from last year, sorted by what their money was last season. So Jamal Adams at the top because he had that really, really expensive deal that finally expired. Justin Simmons is a former Bronco who's, I think, the best free agent safety on the market. A veteran like Eddie Jackson, and, hard to believe that Eddie Jackson is the same age as Justin Simmons. It just feels that Eddie Jackson's been around a little bit longer, but he also is 31 years old, the former Bears on the market. Fellow 31-year-old Quandre Diggs, former Seahawk on the market. Micah Hyde. Now, Micah Hyde's been around the league for a while. Former Packer, former Bill. He's a free agent. Tracy Walker, Marcus May, Jaron Kearse. There's Tashawn Gibson. I talked about him. Logan Ryan, also technically a free agent, but I do believe that Logan Ryan is retiring. I don't know if that's official, if he's announced that yet, but I might have seen it somewhere. They had him in for a cup of coffee last year. He was a valuable player, valuable addition to the 49ers down the stretch, couple-time Super Bowl winner with the Patriots. But anyway, I did just discuss it. The 49ers, obviously, there's the paper trail of them being interested in adding a safety this offseason. That was earlier this offseason with Julian Blackmon, who's since re-signed with the Colts, and with Rayshawn Jenkins, who made that comment saying that the 49ers did offer him a contract, but he thought that the Washington State tax situation was better than the California tax situation. So indisputably, the 49ers were, at least at one point this offseason, interested in adding a veteran safety. And the reason why, I think, is simple, because you go to the safety position on the depth chart here, and Talanoa Hufanga, he's shaded in pink because he's recovering from a torn ACL. Jair Brown, as impressed as the 49ers are with him, and he had that boxing video. He's training with Fred Warner. That was some good footage yesterday. Maybe if Mike is by a computer. I don't know. I think Mike is traveling right now, so maybe he won't be able to. But if Mike is around, maybe you could send us the boxing video of Jair Brown working out with Fred Warner. That was good stuff. Anyway, even though he has an interception under his belt in the Super Bowl, even though he came through in the clutch for the 49ers a couple times last year, he's still only a second-year player. George Odom, more of a special teams guy, as good as he is there. That's not somebody that you're looking to start at safety. And Malik Mustafa is a rookie, and Mustafa is a promising rookie, but he's a rookie indeed. So I could see how the 49ers would want another veteran body in the room. I could see why they've been in touch with Tashawn Gibson over the course of this offseason if he wants to come back, 34 years old now. I mean, all of this makes sense, but I don't know if the prognosis on Talanoa Hufanga has gotten better. We haven't heard anything official from the 49ers. I can tell you I've been out there on the practice field, and I see Talanoa Hufanga working off on the side. It looks like he's in good shape. The body looks physically back on track, but coming back from an ACL obviously isn't easy. So he should be ready to go by training camp, and maybe the 49ers have confirmation of that. Maybe that makes them feel better about not having to bring in a veteran safety. And also, they're getting their initial intel on Malik Mustafa. And the 49ers drafted 3 defensive players this year. 5 of their picks were offensive players. 3 of their picks were defensive players. And there was a clear focus in the 49ers defensive drafting strategy because they wanted to make sure that the guys they picked not only made the team, but also had a good shot to actually be contributors early. Because I mentioned this several times. This team has played 20 game seasons in 3 straight years. They've got a lot of star players who are getting a little bit older, but they've run the marathon now 3 straight times deep into the playoffs / the Super Bowl. Fatigue is an issue, especially when you look at the fact that they're not going to be as rested as some of their opponents this coming season. So the 49ers set out to infuse their defense, especially with youth this year, but they want reliable youth that can immediately fill into some of those roles. Maybe not necessarily a starting role, but a depth role. They used free agency to modernize the defensive line. So in free agency, obviously, they let Eric Armstead go. They cut him, and then they brought in a total of 6 new defensive linemen. They're really, really trying to go for energy infusion along the front, which underperformed, especially against the run last year. And they realized that, hey, if defensive linemen are going to contribute right away, we probably can't rely on rookies there. We've got to go to free agency and get some veterans. But at other spots, such as the 3 drafted spots for the defense, and that's Malik Mustafa, the safety out of Wake Forest, Renardo Green, the cornerback out of Florida State, and his teammate, a fellow Seminole, Tatum Bethune, the linebacker out of Florida State. Those 3 guys, the 49ers really hope that they are ready-made good players to take over a potential role immediately. That doesn't mean that these 3 guys have to start immediately, but it does mean that they're going to want special teams contributions immediately and potential depth contributions immediately from their 3 defensive draftees. And I think it's telling that all 3 of these guys, Green, Bethune, and Malik Mustafa, are all eminently experienced college defenders who are good tacklers. 49ers didn't bring in any defensive projects through the draft that are going to have to learn how to tackle, who might be explosive, but they need some polishing, right, before they can be playable NFL guys. They brought in players who have high floors. Renardo Green, really good tackler at Florida State. Tatum Bethune, really good tackler at Florida State. Malik Mustafa, one of the best tacklers in the nation, coming from the safety position. So when I open up this safety list and I show you guys the potential veterans that are still available at the position, you have to say, well, if the 49ers want to bring in a veteran, they're going to do so to raise what they see as a concerningly low floor at safety. They don't want a liability. They don't want an unplayable guy out there. And I think, by drafting Malik Mustafa at the position, by drafting Renardo Green at cornerback, but he's played a couple years of safety in college, they've considerably raised the floor with their rookie acquisitions. So it might have lessened the impetus and the need and the desire to get a free agent safety to raise the floor. So it at least, and I can't say this for fact, but I think that you can argue that it at least lowered the burning desire to get one of the higher end safeties. Remember, at one point this offseason, the 49ers offered $6 million a year to Rayshawn Jenkins, according to Rayshawn Jenkins, who said that was the match of the Seahawks offer, but the Washington State taxes were the winner for him. That decided that he would sign with Seattle instead. So assuming that's true, the 49ers at one point this offseason were willing to pay up to $6 million for a veteran safety. Now, who knows? Maybe they're willing to pay more for somebody like Justin Simmons since he's better than Rayshawn Jenkins. Nobody knows where the exact price point for each individual player is. It is, in fact, a player-by-player thing because you typically do pay different amounts for different levels of player quality. But We do know that the 49ers were at one point ready to spend a non-zero amount on that safety position. Whether or not that's changed, that is the big question. Say that their willing price that they're willing to dish out for safety is lowered. Maybe Tashawn Gibson comes back for another year. Maybe he's more of a practice squad guy. Maybe he's kind of just waiting in the wings in case the 49ers have some injuries or in case there's some underperformance from somebody like Malik Mustafa. These are all possibilities, and this is just something that I'm going to be looking out for moving forward. What I do know is that the safety market has been slow as molasses over the course of this offseason. There's some established names on here that have yet to be signed. And I get it. You know, the NFL is a young man's league. Jamal Adams is getting close to 30. A lot of these guys are over 30, like Justin Simmons. But Justin Simmons is the active leader in interceptions in the NFL right now. So it's not like he's a no-name. And I'm not saying that it's a entirely one-sided thing, that teams don't want to sign Justin Simmons. There's probably just nobody that's met Justin Simmons at his price yet. Then that does illustrate the initial point that the safety market has been slow. So once this thing does finally speed up, and that probably will require some of these safeties to lower their price tags, I am curious to see if the 49ers are still interested in the position. But the big question at the start of this, I'm going to circle back to this since I know that we have a lot of people who probably just joined the show on this beautiful Sunday evening. The big pressing question is, will Brandon Aiyuk and Christian McCaffrey show up this week? Because that's going to draw the most headlines. It's going to generate the most talk. With Christian, you know, it's nobody knows what's going on. He's kind of off the radar, out of touch. He's getting ready to get married. I think it's very, very clear that he is a victim in this franchise tag era of not being paid what his actual value on the field is, and there's not a whole lot he can do about it just because he is classified as a running back. I think that the solution to that is one that we should be looking at from a larger scale NFL view. I think the NFL at some point is going to need to do away with running back, receiver, tight end delineations. I think that George Kittle is also underpaid relative to the impact that he brings because he's classified as a tight end. And we might even be entering territory where receivers are overpaid just because of the classification. Now, that should correct itself a little bit. Teams might start letting receivers who are up for big deals walk and start to try to draft their replacements. But there always is a balance that's going to be struck. And I think right now, if you're looking at the totality of the offensive skill position player marketplace, receivers have it really good, running backs have it bad, and tight ends don't have it good either. And as soon as these franchise tags are eliminated and you just have maybe one tag for an offensive weapon, I think that could help ameliorate the situation. Because what's happening right now is that somebody like Christian McCaffrey is one of the most impactful players in the receiving game and the pass game in the entire NFL, with how well he runs routes, how well he can compromise safeties and linebackers moving out of the backfield. Yet the franchise tags view this rigidly as Christian McCaffrey is a runner and Brandon Aiyuk is a receiver. In the case of Deebo Samuel, a 49ers receiver, he's both a runner and a receiver. He's obviously paid like a receiver. And I think that you don't account for the fact that so many of these players are able to do both, especially since offensive coordinators like Kyle Shanahan are literally demanding that adaptability in their system. So the structure of how this pay works in the NFL just isn't caught up to the reality of how these players are being used. For somebody like Deebo Samuel, it's totally fine. He had incentives added to his deal for the running, but he was paid at the baseline of a star receiver. And he's totally okay with that because receivers make more than running backs, with the franchise tag being higher for that position. For Christian McCaffrey, though, it's the opposite. He's a multi-use guy as well, but he's sitting there looking at about $12 million a year from the 49ers when you see receivers signing for north of 30. Even if you factor in the signing bonus that Carolina gave years ago to Deebo Samuel, that the 49ers don't have to pay, Christian McCaffrey is the highest paid running back in the league at about $16 million per year, which is half of the top paid receiver in the league. And you can't tell me that Christian McCaffrey is half as valuable as the top wide receiver in the National Football League. Anyway, that's just the state of the market. I say all that, and we don't even know where Christian McCaffrey stands on all this because he's gone radio silent, but we might see Christian this week. We might see him at the 49ers team facility. We also might see Brandon Aiyuk at the facility. And I've written so much about Brandon Aiyuk and his potential new contract and what that might look like. I could even toss that on the screen. I know that it was on the screen a little bit earlier when I had the video playing, but this is what it looks like, the piece at least. We can even scroll down. I mean, I've talked about it a lot this weekend. Let's just get back to that, though. Back to the actual Brandon Aiyuk contract projection. There you go. For me, I don't care that much about average per year. I know everybody else does. I don't think it's the smartest way of looking at contracts, but it gives us a good peripheral gauge, like a zoomed out look at what a contract might be worth. So the one that I proposed for Brandon Aiyuk was for $25.7 million per year, $128.5 million over 5 years. But what really matters is the amount of fully guaranteed money. And I projected $52.3 million of fully guaranteed money for Brandon Aiyuk. Here's a look at the top receivers in yards per route run from this past season. Tyreek Hill leads the league in fully guaranteed money at $52.5 million, somewhere around there. Nico Collins just signed a deal, but he signed early with the Texans, former third-round pick. He still had a year left on his contract. No fifth-year option since he was a third-round pick. But, I mean, he had an awesome year. And if he puts up, say that he hadn't signed his new deal and he put up a 3.10 yard per route run season again, then yes, he would be in line for close to top tier money. Maybe not at quite at Tyreek Hill's level, but really, really good money. He signed early though, and only after 3 years. And I think that's why Nico Collins, we look at his contract and it's only about 35 million fully guaranteed versus about 53 million for Tyreek Hill. I think that Brandon Aiyuk is trying to be above the split the difference amount. If you go 35 million on one end for Nico Collins and fully guaranteed money and 52 million on the other end for Tyreek Hill, so that's a $17 million difference. So it's about 8.5 million above 35 million. So about 44 million is the split the difference number. I think that Brandon Aiyuk would like to be above the split the difference number in terms of fully guaranteed money on his new contract, which means probably wants to be above 45 million, somewhere between 45 and 50 million. Who knows? Maybe he's even demanding 50 million right now. We don't know. We're not privy to these discussions, but the 49ers are obviously trying to get the very best deal that they can get. Brandon Aiyuk is trying to get the most guaranteed money that he can get. It makes business sense for both parties since the 49ers have so many big expenditures looming. Brock Purdy, Aiyuk himself. So they want to make sure that Aiyuk expenditure doesn't get out of control. And Aiyuk, I mean, you only get so many chances to get a bite out of the apple at the NFL. So I don't think that it's selfish from Brandon Aiyuk to want as much money as possible. Just like any of you going to your jobs, you're going to want to be compensated fair market rate. And sometimes it takes time to reach that fair market rate. And that deadline is not coming until about 6 weeks from now at the soonest. But we might see Brandon Aiyuk and Christian McCaffrey before then. All right, I think I've talked about everything. I'm going to move it to 49ers Q&A. 49ers Sports Talk is guessing 47 million fully guaranteed. We'll see. It's going to be fascinating. The latest cluster of receivers, everybody's freaking out. Oh my God, the price for Aiyuk is going up. It's like, no, it's not. All these guys are signing for 31 to 35 million fully guaranteed. That's way below what Aiyuk's number was going to be based on the production. I mean, Aiyuk, he's an outlier, top right kind of guy. By top right, I mean, you look at these production graphs and you find Brandon Aiyuk's dot, and it's over here. So a guy that's over here and a guy that's over here after he's done it for 2 seasons, he's going to be paid a lot closer to your Tyreek Hills and even your Justin Jeffersons. And we're waiting for Justin Jefferson to sign. We're waiting for CeeDee Lamb to sign. CeeDee Lamb's also in the upper right quadrant over there. Brandon Aiyuk is going to make that kind of money. I mean, he's done it again. He's done this for 2 seasons. I mean, full 1,000 plus yard production, top right kind of production. He's done it for a full 2 seasons. He's waited his turn. This is the standard time to pay a guy like this. The number is going to be closer to 50 million than is going to be to 30 million. I think that's clear in terms of fully guaranteed money. So it hadn't gotten more expensive for the 49ers. In fact, the parameters that are going to most closely determine how much Brandon Ayuk's actual market is are potential deals for CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. And those contracts aren't done yet either. Can the Players Union get a better deal for elite running backs? No. I mean, the Players Union doesn't have really any power in this situation. It's the franchise tag. The amount of it is the average of the top 5 salaries at the position at any given time. So if a team has the threat of using the franchise tag, that number is set. And if a player goes out and asks for 10 million more than the franchise tag per year, well, then the team won't grant that offer and they'll say, okay, we won't negotiate with you. We'll just tag you. The franchise tag keeps that salary, that number anchored low for running backs. And the only thing that the players union would be able to do, and they wouldn't be able to do this, but the only thing they'd be able to push for is to abolish these franchise tags, especially based, I mean, I guess they could take the NFL to court about the franchise tags. I think you would have a case at this point with somebody like Christian McCaffrey, who is lining up as a receiver, who's catching passes out of the backfield. I just think that the whole notion of franchise tags that are delineated by offensive position is an outdated one. And the 49ers and Christian McCaffrey have helped make it outdated with how good he is in the receiving game on top of his running back duties. Can the team afford to give Christian McCaffrey guaranteed money? Well, yeah, they're already planning on paying him this year, and it's non-guaranteed, right? So it's just going to be, I think it would vest into a full guarantee if he's on the roster for week 1. But I think he would want, I mean, just guaranteeing this year's $11.8 million salary, so that's going to happen automatically as a vested veteran come week 1. That wouldn't be enough to make a real gesture out of it. They probably would have to find a way to add some guarantees in 2025, maybe even tack on a year to the deal, maybe tack on a little bit of a raise. But they already have that money earmarked for McCaffrey, but it's not guaranteed right now. And again, we don't know what McCaffrey exactly wants, if he wants anything. That's the big limbo of all this. That's why I headlined this. Is he going to show up this week? Mandatory minicamp. Is Brandon Aiyuk going to show up? And we'll just take each data point as it comes and move forward from there. Do I think that the joint practices with the Saints will be open to the public? Were Rams practices in training camp? Does anybody know? Is Jim Everett here? Were the Rams open at UC Irvine? Because the Rams are open at UC Irvine, it tells us that UC Irvine has the facilities and the capability to host fans. And if that's the case, then the Saints will be able to host fans at UC Irvine, and that would mean that probably yes. I mean, I would think the Saints holding training camp out in California, was this the first time? I would think that they would want to put that on some kind of display. They wouldn't just want to have a bunch of private workouts. So I don't know, though. I don't know how this kind of works. The one time that we need Chris Everett or Jim Everett, it's Jim Everett. It's not Chris Everett. 49er Sports Talk is trying to correct me here. It's Jim Everett. He's like the former Rams quarterback. He's our resident Rams troll in the chat. So he's always like saying a bunch of nonsense, but I think he has some kind of Visalia connection. That's where I'm from, because he always says something about meeting up on Mooney Boulevard. I think he's kind of funny. I think he's decently respectful. So I don't care about Jim Everett. He might annoy some of you sometime. But the one time that we actually need him to answer a question about Rams training camp, he is not here. He's not trolling. So come on, Jim. Show up when it matters. But I guess that Jim Everett never did show up when it mattered in actual games, especially against the 49ers in the 1990 NFC Championship game, which San Francisco won 30-3 at Candlestick Park. So maybe it actually is Jim Everett, and it is a genuine no-show. So moving forward, I'm ready for more questions. I'm going to hide the current comment because I don't have an answer for you. You guys are not in a talkative mood today. We're 45 minutes in, and you guys are just ready for minicamp, I could tell. Who liked the sandwich today? Thumbs up if you like the sandwich from Roxy Food Center. Double thumbs up if you're planning to go hit it up at Roxy Food Center. I have a lot of recommendations coming your way in the coming months, coming days. This season's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of fun with this here in San Francisco. We're getting some thumbs up. I love it. People are going to go try some of that food. Good. How far in advance do you know who will be at camp? Is it that morning at the same time as everyone else, or do the reporters get a heads up? Sometimes they get a heads up. Maybe Christian McCaffrey will text, "Hey, I'm showing up." Maybe he won't. I don't know. I mean, sometimes you find out information, sometimes you don't. But yeah, I would expect that to drop on Tuesday. Practice is at 10:40 a.m. So just have notifications on, and whenever I do have an update, I will make a video. I'll send out a tweet. There'll be an article at some point up on The Athletic as well. Yeah, the sandwiches aren't very good out in Nashville. They specialize more in the biscuit sandwiches, which are really good. That place, Maple Street Biscuit Company. That's legit. Every region of America has its own food specialty, and deli sandwiches, all very unfortunately, are not Tennessee's specialty. You do need some recommendations in Tennessee. So do I for the next month or so. I'm going to need some recommendations. I'm going to get out of San Francisco. I'm probably not going to be in California much. Every time I come back, I appreciate this place for its food so much. And I'm going to chart out a plan of all the spots we're going to hit during the regular season. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't believe nobody else is covering San Francisco's food scene yet, along with the 49ers, because the Bay Area has some of the best food in the world. And so many of these places are tied in some way to the 49ers through fandom, through, a lot of these places have served 49ers greats throughout the years. I don't think you can cover a football team properly without also covering the community, because sports is family and sports is community. That's why it means so much to people, right? If it didn't mean anything to people, if it wasn't ingrained in the community, then it would be like the XFL. Nobody cares about the XFL, right? And nobody cares about these random teams. Nobody cares about your fantasy team, for example. People think that everybody else cares about their fantasy team, but they don't. But the reason that large collections of people care about the San Francisco 49ers is because there is this built-up tradition that is ingrained in the community. So I go out to these places and I talk to people about the 49ers. I eat the food of the community, because football and food are synonymous. They both bring people together, often at the same time. And I think I'd be asleep at the switch if I wasn't covering everything, all aspects of this, not just what happens at the facility, but what happens in the community as well. I actually never been to French Laundry. I'm just waiting for somebody to invite me to French Laundry. I don't really feel like paying and sitting down for 4 hours right now. I'm more of a grab and go kind of guy. It's bang, bang, you got to go. That's why I love the sandwiches and I love that kind of food. I'm in that kind of category when I'm searching for food, not for these longer sit down meals. I've done a show from the Canyon Inn. That was a fun one. So thanks for the recommendation. I'm sure I'll go back. But the burger in Canyon Inn, the Hacksaw Burger, named after Jack Hacksaw Reynolds, that one is really, really good. You made a Juicy Lucy Minneapolis special. I flew out of Minneapolis the other day. Minneapolis to San Francisco. We'll be heading back in a couple months in September. All right, guys. Everybody, thank you. 50 minutes. We've hit the magic number. It's been good. We'll talk to you soon.